general participants, the trainees will start to be invited in this room. Also, this workshop will be streamlined on the real time. So using the CS Lab TV, so that anybody in the world who would be interested in watching this workshop can actually watch it or what we will discuss today. So in the meantime, just wait. If we wanna, have another coffee, you can bring your coffee again. So I think we expect more than 25 trainees. Actually, most of them are government officers in Ethiopia. So until we start to have a formal session, uh, and then you can have some break for now.
Distinguished participants and esteemed general participants, we would like to welcome you to our workshop on enhancing capacity of Ethiopia to address climate change. Before starting our first module, we would like to briefly introduce the basic functions of the Zoom webinar. So first, when you are not speaking, please mute your microphone so that it won't make any interruption during the presentation. To change your name, click the participant list and find the rename tab. Please change your name to your full name so that you would be noticed by your name when you ask questions or etc. To interact, share information, and report technical issue and pose question, please use the chat box. You may use the chat box to ask questions to the speakers. The moderator for each module will collect the questions and pass on selected few. Please be noted that due to time constraints, not all of your questions may be answered. Finally, for the presenters only, please use the share screen function so that all of the participants can view your PowerPoint file during your presentation. In addition, please be noted that our secretariat member may interrupt during the speech when your time is almost elapsed. We hope you would excuse us for the interruption. Please be noted that except the speaker, the microphone will be muted during the presentation. Now we would like to commence the first module, which is high-level opening session of the workshop. This module will be a chance to hear opening remarks of high-level participants of the workshop. Our most esteemed Professor Seong Chung of Korea University will moderate the first session. Please welcome Professor Seong Chung for the moderating.
Thank you, Jiyun. Good morning for those who are in the Addis Ababa, and then good afternoon, those who are in Seoul. My name is Suyong Chung. I'm a professor of Korea University based in Seoul, Korea. We used to organize this workshop every summer in Addis Ababa, but this year, due to COVID-19, we decided to have the same workshop through this online platform today. As a first program that we prepare for, we would like to hear from the distinguished VIPs from the partner organizations on their views on the relevant issues and then our activities that we have done for the last 3 years. Without further ado, first speaker is His Excellence Professor Pekka Dubayan, Commissioner of the Environment, Forestry, Climate Change Commission of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. So Professor Pekadu, this is your turn.
Thank you very much, Professor. His Excellency, Ambassador Yon Min Lim, Korean Ambassador to Ethiopia. His Excellency, Mr. Wong Go Song, Vice President for Global Partnership, KOICA. His Excellency, Dr. Frank Rajesh Berman, Director General of Global Green Growth Institute. Professor Suyong Chung, Korean University. Excellencies, online attendees, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Environment, Forest and the Climate Commission of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this virtual workshop that aims at enhancing the capacity of Ethiopia to address the impacts of climate change. First of all, I would like to express my greatest appreciation for the Center for Global Climate and Marine Governance of Korea University and the Global Green Growth Institute for co-organizing this timely workshop despite the difficulties we encountered due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you all know, climate change is a global phenomenon that poses one of the greatest challenges to humanity. There is no secret that climate change affects sustainability and adaptation, with several added costs that are an immense burden for least developed countries to bear. In light of our national capabilities, it is simply impossible to meet the urgent needs of ensuring sustainable development and the green growth in the absence of a predictable and timely provision of adequate financial resources, environmentally sound technologies, and the capacity building that are equally humanitarian obligations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, following the CRG implementation over the last 9 years, Ethiopia is now developing its 10 years perspective development plan that runs from 2020 to 2030. The plan considers a strong momentum toward these large-scale investments in irrigation agriculture, renewable energy, ecotourism, sustainable natural resource management, including forestry, that is critical for broad-based rural development and private sector involvement, along with Ethiopia's vision for green and resilient development, the CRG strategy. COVID-19 underscores the urgency of building resilient economy, which withstands not only to pandemics, but also to other systemic risks and shocks, such as climate change and ecosystem destruction. As we are on the verge of finalizing our 10 years perspective development plan, it is imperative to take into account the short and the medium-term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic vis-a-vis the implementation of the CRG strategy. As in the context of post-COVID-19 recoveries, Ethiopia has been working towards developing a viable plan on how the current CRGE can be used as the primary means for green recovery. It is with this spirit that this year's virtual workshop is organized. To this end, the workshop will address pertinent topics that are relevant in light of the post-COVID-19 recovery, particularly on how will the CRG be better utilized as a way of ensuring the green recovery. Besides, participants will explore important topics on the role of the international market mechanism under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement as a means of ensuring more climate finance as well as how can RED Plus and other related activities be better integrated into the process of implementation of CRGE. Moreover, the workshop will provide a platform to share Korean experiences in the forest sector and to discuss policy suggestions to better implement the CRG strategy. More importantly, it will shed light on strengthening the existing areas of cooperation between Ethiopia and the Republic of Korea and other international partners in the endeavor to realize Ethiopia's aspiration to build a green and resilient economy. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we have been hosting a series of capacity building workshops with the general support of KOICA since 2018. What makes this series workshop different is that it's being held virtually amid the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Similar to the previous year's workshop, it is my strong belief that this workshop will contribute to further strengthening the capacity of our expertise and officials who are involved in the implementation of the CRG strategy. To this end, I urge all participants, all modules attentively and actively engage in the forthcoming discussions. As I conclude, I want to assure you that my government will continue its unwavering commitment to working with the Republic of Korea to address numerous impacts of climate change and other environmental challenges collectively. Ethiopia also very much appreciates the grateful to the continued contribution of KOICA and Triple GI in supporting the overall implementation of our climate action plan. I'm delighted to know that the project proposal submitted last year through Triple GI entitled Climate Resilient Landscape Restoration is now maturing and at the final stage of approval. We remain confident that the project will be given priority and approved irrespective of the implications of COVID-19 for the government of Korea and that it will soon be implemented. Let me take this opportunity to call upon the Republic of Korea and all our development partners to continue their commitment in supporting Ethiopia's aspiration to build a green and resilient economy through the implementation of the CRG strategy in the years to come. I wish you all a fruitful deliberation. Let us stay safe, let us stay healthy, and let us keep our environment clean. I thank you.
Thank you very much. So your statement really encouraged us not only sharing the outcomes that we have achieved so far, but find a way of continuously working together for the better opportunities to achieve in the future. In that sense, that thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite His Excellency Hu Min Lim, Ambassador to Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia from Republic of Korea. Ambassador Lim, floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Jung. Good morning, everyone in Ethiopia, and good afternoon in Korea. Your Excellency, Dr. Fekadu Bene, Commissioner of the Environment, Forest, and Climate Change Commission of Ethiopia. Your Excellency, Ambassador Shin Gak-soo, former Vice Foreign Minister of Korea. Distinguished participants. I am very pleased to join all of you to congratulate the convening of today's workshop. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Jung and other organizers for their efforts to prepare this workshop in spite of many difficulties caused by COVID-19. Even under the unprecedented pandemic crisis, the importance and the urgency of responding to climate change cannot be minimized. In fact, while the pandemic has brought massive disruption in our lives, it also teaches us a lesson that we should approach climate change more informed about the consequences of inaction and may present an opportunity for us to move a more sustainable lifestyle. I hope we can also discuss today the implications of the pandemic crisis for our future response to climate change. Distinguished participants, inarguably, Ethiopia has taken the lead in our global response to climate change. Ethiopia was among the first signatories to the Paris Agreement, committing ambitiously to cut carbon emissions by 64% by 2030. Since its launch of climate resilient green economy strategy in 2011, Ethiopia has achieved great success in various fields of responding to climate change. Among those achievements, afforestation and land rehabilitation may be the key success story. Ethiopia has attained more than 80% of the target of its national reforestation program, Green Legacy Initiative, having planted more than 4 billion trees in only 2 years. In addition, as a founding member of the Global Green Growth Institute, Ethiopia is actively participating in international efforts to address climate change and achieve green growth, including P4G public-private cooperation. As we are well aware, Ethiopia and Korea have maintained special cooperative relationship in many areas based on historical ties of Ethiopia's participation in the Korean War. Addressing to climate change is now one of the most active areas of cooperation between our two countries. In addition to KOICA's project, which all of you worked together 3 years, the Korea Forest Service and the Ethiopian government have been conducting a forest restoration partnership program since 2019. This project was selected as the first project of the Korea's Peace Forest Initiative, PFI, and as one of the P4G startup partnership projects this year as well. P4G is another venue for close cooperation between our two countries. Unfortunately, this year's Seoul P4G summit has been postponed due to the COVID-19 and is expected to be held possibly next year. Ethiopia's active participation in the summit at the highest level will contribute to the success of the event as well as further strengthen our cooperation. Active role of GGGI Ethiopia office is also noteworthy. GGGI office will carry out another big project with the support of KOICA for 5 years from next year based on the achievement of your works in this project. Distinguished participants, today's workshop, which concludes 3 years project all of you participated in, is another achievement of our two countries' collaborative efforts. In addition to valuable policy recommendations, this 3-year project has made a good example of cooperation between two countries through active participation at the level of universities, international organizations, as well as governments in both countries. I sincerely hope that our two countries will continue active cooperation in responding to climate change together based on the achievement of this project, including the outcome of today's workshop. Once again, I thank all of you for joining and hope you to enjoy today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Lim. Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Ung Song, Vice President for Global Partnership of KOICA. So, Ambassador Song, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning in Addis Ababa and good afternoon in Seoul. First of all, I would like to extend my hearty welcome to every distinguished attendees today. His Excellency Commissioner Fekadu Beyen, His Excellency Ambassador Hun-Min Lim, Dr. Frank Wiesberman, Director General of GGGI, Director Stefan Klingibiel, UNDP Seoul Policy Center, Senior Advisor, His Excellency Ambassador Gaksu Shin, Dean Motuma Tolera, Hawassa University. I would also like to express my gratitude to our excellent partner, Professor Seoyoung Jung, and his project team of Korea University. As we know, today's workshop is a part of the project on enhancing capacity of Ethiopia to address climate change by focusing forestry sector with the support of KOICA. Even though we cannot meet face-to-face and share warm handshakes due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I do believe we can achieve expected goals by sharing views of leading world experts from different parts of the world. And I expect even further benefits for general audience from all over the world by providing online streaming service. Ladies and gentlemen, since the Paris Agreement was adopted in 2015, all the member countries of the UNFCCC have made their efforts to develop and implement their national climate change implementation plan. In this regard, Ethiopia has prepared the CRGE, stands for Climate Resilient Green Economy, in order to fulfill requirements of the Paris Agreement. I believe this workshop will be a positive contribution to understanding and enhancing the cutting-edge issues on how to realize low carbon economy through implementing the CRGE. Finally, I'm pleased that KOICA has been a good partner in this endeavor by supporting current activities by Korea University, Hawassa University, and other partner organizations in Ethiopia. KOICA has also increasingly emphasized the necessity and the importance of cooperating with the leading global organizations such as GGGI and UNDP. Once again, I would like to express my wishes on continuing good partnerships between KOICA and all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Song, for your kind remarks. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Frank Riesberman, Director General of the Global Green Growth Institute. Frank, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think, am I successful in unmuting? Yes, indeed. Well, good morning in Addis, good afternoon in Seoul, as everybody said. Excellencies, the Commissioner, ambassadors, colleagues, if I can presume all protocol observed. This is indeed a project that, as many of the previous speakers already indicated, brings together a very interesting group of partners. For GGI, Ethiopia is a very important country, one of our founding members, and indeed we have supported Ethiopia for a long time from the initial development of the CRGE, and very pleased to see that after about 10 years, the government is now reviewing with an eye to refreshing that into a new 2020-2030 strategy. I think Ethiopia is showing a lot of leadership among least developed countries and in Africa as well. When this project started, it was a good opportunity for GGI to also work more closely with academic partners, particularly Korea University and Hawassa University in Ethiopia. And at the time, we didn't have any other KOICA project, so it was in a way a small project to re-establish our partnership with KOICA as well, which has gone very well, I think. The project, of course, as we already mentioned, has led to a much larger project in the same subject that will support Ethiopia's reforestation effort. Pleasing to see and the output of this project. In the meantime, GGI has also developed its partnership with KOICA in a number of directions. We have started projects in Lao PDR, in Pacific and Philippines, and several others in the pipeline. So that is a strong relationship as well, built in a way on the back of this particular project. We were, of course, very excited to see that the Ethiopian Prime Minister is emphasizing reforestation, as you already mentioned, through his personal leadership in the tree planting campaign. But not only there, also in many other areas of climate change. GGI has supported Ethiopia in its leadership of the least developed countries group in the UNFCCC, for instance. And Ethiopia is a leader on many fronts in the area of climate change. I think the project here supported that effort. And as already mentioned, for the Korea Forest Service and its new Peace Forest initiative, there are many opportunities to reinforce the lessons learned in this project through specific follow-up projects, both in Ethiopia and in other places. And finally, even the P4G partnership has already been mentioned. So altogether, I think we've been very lucky through this project that has gone on for 3 years to be able to reinforce collaboration among the partners here. And I'm very pleased to have had the chance to visit Ethiopia for earlier workshops. Too bad that didn't work out this time, but I'm sure there will be future opportunities to reinforce our partnership in person on the ground. In the meantime, I'm happy that we have this workshop at least, and I'm looking forward to see the results of the project discussed in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Now, I'd like to invite the another important partner of this project activities, Mr. Stefan Klingeberli, Director of the UNDP Seoul Policy Center. So, Stefan, floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Chong. Honorable Commissioner of the Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Commissioner of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Mr. Fekadu Beyen, Honorable Ambassador to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia from the Republic of Korea, Mr. Honmin Lim, Vice President for the Global Partnerships of KOICA, Mr. Wunjuk Song, Director General of Global Green Growth Institute, Mr. Frank Gisperman, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Korea, Mr. Kak So-chin, and Professor So-Young Chong, Korea University. Distinguished presenters of today's workshop, ladies and gentlemen, and participants of the YouTube streaming. Good morning and good afternoon to you all. Today's workshop focuses on enhancing capacity of Ethiopia to address climate change. This is a really important topic because we are increasingly seeing all the devastating consequences of climate change. I know from my own travels to several remote parts of Ethiopia how important the challenge is for the population of this beautiful country. As the director of the UNDP Seoul Policy Center for Knowledge Exchange through SDG partnerships, it's my pleasure to work. It's my pleasure for me to speak on the opening session of today's workshop. As the title of our center implies, UNDP's Global Policy Center in Seoul has the mandate to broker knowledge and partnership between the Republic of Korea and partner countries. The Seoul Policy Center was established in 2011. It is one of UNDP's 5 global policy centers and builds bridges between Korea, new development partners, and developing nations on key development issues and supports capacity building. In the last 5 years, our center has been active on various green issues, sharing and exchanging knowledge on Korea's innovative practices on sustainable energy, energy efficiency, waste and wastewater management, recognizing the importance of climate action and environmental policy in the achievement of the SDGs. Furthermore, by focusing on resilience, we now have a rich portfolio on sustainable forestry. Specifically on forestry, So far, we have produced 6 publications, including 3 SDG policy briefs highlighting various aspects of Korea's reforestation and forest management efforts. Also 2 years ago, based on a competitive selection process, we launched SDG partnerships in sustainable forestry. We are partnering with Korea Forest Service, National Institute of Forest Science, and Korea University in this process. So far, we are working in Ghana, sharing Korea's wildfire management practices. In Myanmar, we are sharing Korea's community forestry experience to local and indigenous communities, and in Tajikistan on the evaluation of disaster risk reduction through reforestation efforts. In each case, the knowledge exchange is contextualized to the local socioeconomic and environmental realities. We plan to add 2 more SDG partnerships next year. Let me also add that UNDP, with its presence in 170 countries and territories, has a broader portfolio of forestry work, and now we are also working on UNDP's COVID-19 offer on forests. As such, our support and collaboration with Korea also draws on and leverages this broader portfolio of work and expertise. My colleague Sawat will speak about UNDP's work in implementing nationally determined contributions in the forestry sector. Let me end by expressing my appreciation to all our partners here today. Especially, I would like to congratulate Professor Sonjong Chong and the team at the Center for Global Climate and Marine Governance at Korea University for bringing us together virtually. And my thanks to all co-hosts, including Korea International Cooperation Agency, KOICA, Korea University, the Green Asia Organization, and the Center for Climate and Sustainable Development Law and Policy, Hawassa University, and Global Green Growth Institute. I look forward to informative presentations and fruitful discussions today and our continued partnership in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Now, I'd like to our final speaker, Ambassador Kak Soo-shin, Senior Advisor of the CSLF and the former Vice Minister of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Korea. Ambassador Shin, floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor John. Dear colleagues, let me start by extending my warm greetings to all those in Seoul and Ethiopia. I'm very delighted to see the familiar faces and speak a few words at this August webinar workshop. As you know, this event is held to wrap up the important joint project between Korea and Ethiopia on climate change. It offers us a good opportunity to reflect on what we have achieved during the last 3 years and to consider what should be further sought to fulfill the mission originally planned. It is unfortunate that COVID-19 prevented us from gathering in Seoul or Addis Ababa this time. I still vividly remember the wonderful memory of Ethiopia when I visited there to launch this project. Since we embarked on this ambitious project to help Ethiopia address the climate change 3 years ago, we have made a great stride in laying the groundwork for preparing a sound and sustainable green economy strategy by sharing knowledge and information, identifying the needs of the government and private stakeholders, including universities, and planning and implementing a series of activities. During the journey of these efforts, I have been privileged to take part in some of them, including the first workshop for the Ethiopian government officials in 2018. At the time, I could witness a high level of ambition and passion of Ethiopians in their quest for thriving to become a middle-income country by 2030 through the implementation of Ethiopia's climate resilient green economy, CRGE. Yesterday, I read an article reporting that heat stress caused by climate change would deprive us of almost 80 million jobs worldwide, tantamount to almost 2.5 trillion US dollars in 2030. Likewise, a myriad of natural disasters of unprecedented scale, such as California wildfires, heavy rainfall in Korea, China, and Japan, and sporadic outbreaks of severe drought, are thought to be the creation of the warmed earth. The pandemic COVID-19, considered as the greatest havoc on world health and economy since the Second World War, is another challenge that arose out of the environmental degradation precipitated by climate change. All in all, the call for effective response to the aggravating global warming is becoming more urgent than ever. It remains yet to be seen whether we should live in a with-corona world or a post-corona world. However, it is imperative for us to accelerate our efforts to faithfully deliver the commitments under the Paris Agreement. Another big task ahead of us in our fight against the coronavirus is to obtain the fastest possible recovery of the hard-hit world economy. Against this backdrop, I'd like to underline the importance of pursuing the green recovery by taking the implementation measures on nationally determined contributions of the Paris Agreement in a speedy and effective manner. Last month, the Korean government put emphasis on the two pillars of digital revolution and green growth in its New Deal economy, which was designed to address the pandemic-stricken economy in Korea. I hope that our joint project will also benefit from this new initiative on the basis of what we have achieved for the last 3 years to meet the additional challenges ahead. Finally, as a senior advisor of the Center for Climate and Sustainable Development, in other words, CSD Lab, I'd like to say we are very proud of being a part in carrying out this meaningful project. On behalf of the CSD Lab, I also would like to extend my profound thanks to the government of Ethiopia, Hawassa University, Korean Embassy in Ethiopia, KOICA, the Global Green Growth Institute, and UNDP, all our precious partners, for their strength and efforts as a team to pursue the lofty goal of addressing climate change in Ethiopia. I'm sure that this noble endeavor will bear concrete fruit in the form of ensuring a greener, more comfortable, and stable planet. I wish all of you good health amid COVID-19 and every success in your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Shin. Ambassador Shin has been a great supporter from the beginning until now on our various activities teamed up with our partner organizations to work together with the Ethiopian counterparts. So thank you very much. Now we just finished the listening to all the planned speeches by the distinguished VIPs. Now I'd like to hand over the microphone to the Secretary.
Thank you for such inspiring and motivating opening remarks. And now we will have a short 15 minutes break. So please be back by 10:30. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We would like to resume our session. Before we start, we would like to remind all trainees to turn on your videos and rename yourselves to full name so that you can be recognized by your name. So now, assuming that all of us are ready, we would like to move on to our second module, which is on roles of international organizations. We will have a 20 minutes of Q&A session at the end of module 2. So if you have any questions, please submit it through the chat room. So the first speaker would be Mr. Dong-ho Kim, the Ethiopia Country Office Director of KOICA, and he will give us a brief presentation of KOICA's cooperation with Ethiopia to address COVID-19. So Mr. Kim, you have a maximum of 10 minutes.
Okay. Your Excellency, Fekado Beyene, Commissioner of Ethiopian Environment, Forest and Climate Change Commission, Your Excellency Hun Min-lim, Ambassador of Republic of Korea to Ethiopia, Your Excellency Ung Yeop-song, KOICA Vice President of Global Partnership, Your Excellency Frank Risperman, Director General of GCI, Your Excellency Stefan Klin-GBL, Director of UNDP Seoul Policy Center. Also, Your Excellency Gak Soo-shin, Senior Advisor, CSD Lab, and former Vice Foreign Minister of Korea. Also, Professor Jung and distinguished guests. I'd like to extend my appreciation to all of you for joining today's workshop. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the Korea University and the Hawassa University for organizing this workshop under these circumstances with COVID-19. About 1 year ago, I firstly joined this workshop series, of which aim is to discuss how Ethiopia can be more prepared and adapted to the climate crises. At that time, participants did not actually imagine the world would soon face this kind of devastating health pandemic and deepest economic collapse in the modern history. Currently, many countries of the global affected hardly by the pandemic and the suffering a lot. As COVID-19 spreads across the world, Ethiopian government has responded swiftly to the pandemic. However, despite best efforts, cases are increasing fast in recent weeks. The newly confirmed infection cases reached more than 1,500 every day, and the total accumulation number of confirmed cases is more than 40,000, recognizing the magnitude of the social and economic impact of the virus and urgent need to decisively respond. Ethiopian government appealed to the development partners for immediate actions and support so that the virus will not aggravate poverty, not heighten food security, not increase loss of livelihood and vulnerability to disease. So in order to contribute to the Ethiopian government action to respond to the rapid spread of COVID-19, Korea International Cooperation Agency office in Ethiopia has carried out humanitarian emergency aid directly by KOICA and Korean NGOs. Also, some projects to enhance the health system and support the vulnerables by providing medical equipment and capacity building. For more information, last May, Korea provided medical supplies to Ethiopia to assist Ethiopia with its response to COVID-19. It included over 25,000 PCR diagnostic kits, and more than 150,000 face masks and disinfection solutions. In addition to these emergencies response, COICA is carrying out the action with the cooperation with the Ministry of Health with the amount of 5 million USD to enhance the health system support to the vulnerables and capacity building for detection and the monitoring, and also support to small and medium entrepreneurs to produce personal protection equipment like masks. Now also COICA is cooperating with the African Union to strengthen preparedness and response to COVID-19 in African Union members states through the procurement of surveillance, infection prevention and control, also laboratory and hospital equipment and supplies. COICA in this regard will support the initiative for partnership to accelerate COVID-19 testing, trace, test, and track launched by Africa CDC. COICA now is cooperating with the various kind of partners. I mean, African Union CDC and WHO, UNOPS, and IOM, and other civil society organizations. Distinguished guests, COVID-19 pandemic requires immediate and short-term coping. So in fact, drastic measures to flatten the curve of infection in the country has been already taken by the Ethiopian government, and also supported by many international organizations like COICA and Korea, and also European countries. So we hope this kind of global cooperation will soon garner promising results in the fighting against COVID-19 pandemic. So distinguished guests, in Ethiopia, forest is the important sector in terms of climate change adaptation and the mitigation. And forest conservation and the restoration of degraded ecosystem are the large part of the solution to climate change, as the Paris Agreement explicitly recognized. So we, COICA, in partnership with the GGI Ethiopia, developed a forest and landscape rehabilitation project last year, and it is set to begin to be implemented over 13,000 hectares of degraded lands in selected watershed earlier next year. So in addition, we are considering the bamboo project for the action against the social and economic impact by the COVID-19. So COICA is going to review this project for the year of 2022. So also COICA is going to carry out some more project for the this kind of Ethiopian government action to tackle against socio-economic negative impact by the COVID-19, by the formulation of new project for the small and medium companies. Also, COICA is going to formulation of the new project for the healthcare program for the vulnerables. So it is my hope that we can have another opportunity to talk more on our country profile in forest, and I hope this workshop will be very useful for you to engage your brilliant mind into fruitful discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dong Kim, for such helpful presentation. And now Professor Soyoung Chung will provide us with a presentation on post-COVID-19 recovery plan, Korea's Green New Deal and its lessons on developing countries. And now I would like to give the floor to Professor Chung. You will have a maximum of 15 minutes for the presentation.
Thank you. Now my microphone is on. Before I load my presentation file, I just try to welcome all of the participants in this room. And then the main purpose of my presenting on this issue on the Green New Deal is because it seems like this is one of the new fashion at the global level in the context of how we can further utilize already existing the efforts to address climate change under the Paris Agreement, in order to better address the COVID-19 recovery issues. So in the sense that I do hope that even if it's going to be brief, my presentation will help you better understand how CRG can be better used to deal with COVID-19 recovery plans. Let me just load my presentation file. So let me just go through my presentation file as quickly as possible. Okay. So it's a Green New Deal in Korea, status play and its implication for developing countries. Actually, original version of this presentation goes back to the early, I think, as I recall, the May, when the UNDP Seoul Policy Center actually invited me to give a presentation first time, possibly within Korea, about this idea. And this is a sort of the updated version based on my initial presentation that I gave before by reflecting some of the further progress made within Korea. So here, you need to understand very briefly about the history of climate change policy of Korea. It goes back to the year 2008 to 2012, when the former President Lee Myung-bak administration launched the so-called low carbon green growth policy. Many of you heard about Global Green Growth Institute, and then the green growth policy, and then the other related terms. And then it was the first time in Korea for Korea to use the term during the Lee Myung-bak administration. And this is a time when actually climate change issues was successfully mainstreamed within the context of the Korean policy. And then this is a time when the Korean government, together with other partner countries and organizations and then experts, established the Global Green Growth Institute and also hosted the GCF. And then next administration by the former President Park Geun-hye, they focused on rather more like a technology-based issues, ICT and other green technologies under the policy of creative economy. And then now, current Moon Jae-in government from the 2017, Moon Jae-in administration introduced a so-called energy transition policy to a large extent. And then they also tries to promote the renewable energy in this context. Also because of some of the regional air pollution problems in Northeast Asia, they put a lot of emphasis on handling the air pollution matters as well. So there is a continuity in the Korean context in terms of how this climate change policy has been in the middle of the government implementation of the policies under the Paris Agreement. And then now, let me talk briefly about the concept of the Green New Deal. This concept appeared not first time at this time. Actually, it goes back to the year 2007 and 8, when the entire global society face the global financial crisis started by the bankruptcy of the Lehman Brothers in the United States. And then mostly at the time that measures discussed under the concept of the Green New Deal were about fiscal stimulus packages. And then, as I stated here, it was largely successful, but didn't lead to significant greening of the economy, actually. And then the main venue to discuss about this idea of the Green New Deal was through the G20 at the time. So it was a successful first attempt to address the sort of the stimulus, plans in order to address some of the global financial challenges, and then mainly through G20. But there was some question whether or not it was really helpful to green the economy itself. And now we comes to the 2020, suddenly we have to respond to the impact of the COVID-19. And then here, there are similarities, but there are also differences between the 2007 and 8 and the 2020. Stimulus and recovery plans now needs to focus on a new, more sustainable, and here important term, inclusive and resilient economic model, supporting a so-called just transition from our current pattern of economic activity. So a big difference between the 2007 and 8 version and now is that it tends to emphasize more on the inclusiveness and resilience of the aspects. And then if you are interested in following up how this concept has evolved, and one of the first starting point in the promoting Green New Deal idea at this time was in Europe from last year. And then even within the Europe, this just transition seems to be one of the guiding term in order to put more emphasis on the equity and inclusiveness issues. In the case of the G20, for instance, then because health, COVID-19, of course, health issue is very, very important. And another important issue that we are talking about at the G20 level is the digital, because it will help the people to deal with some of the new normal situation at this time. Of course, all the time, the green is one of the main pillars, even in G20. Here, overall, another difference between the Green New Deal in 2007 and 8 and now is that at the time in 2007, the significant impact was given to the mostly and more developed world, but whereas COVID-19, actually there is no exception, no matter whether you are the rich or the poor. So in that sense that the developing countries became more vulnerable to this global impact under the COVID-19. So there is more need to assist the developing countries even at the global level. And then Korea Green New Deal recovery plans, it first started in May this year by the announcement of the President Moon. And then he said that Green New Deal will be included together with the Digital New Deal as a recovery plans. And it was the first time that when the Korean government actually mentioned about the Green New Deal by the president. Before this announcement, there were some, indications that the Korea might focus on green to large extent by some of the international, speeches by the environment minister at the international level. Also, some of the indications, strong indications by the ruling party, which emphasized a lot about necessary for the Green New Deal. So overall, Korea, even if it didn't prepare for the details on the Green New Deal before, but it has been moving very quickly to realize all these plans into real actions. I'm sorry that I'm just showing some Korean, character only. I had a hard time in visualizing this again in English, but let me just explain to you. So here, the vision is that by utilizing this Green New Deal policy, Korea has a vision of becoming a global leader, right? This is, sort of the vision of the Korea, New Deal policy. Korea New Deal policy has two segments, as I indicated. One is digital, the other one is green. So we have two pillars under the Green New Deal policy. And then there is a social safety net is very, very important to put placed in place. And then the financial support and institutional supports are necessary. And this is some of the details of 10 major projects that this government would like to engage in the context of the New Deal. New Deal, once again in Korea, includes Digital New Deal and Green New Deal. And then now today's presentation of mine focuses on Green New Deal. And then in order to make this idea in place, government developed some of the inter-ministerial coordination, mechanism under the president. So it seems like they are working so far pretty well in Korea. So there are new ideas, and then there is a support of the government mechanism to coordinate all different kinds of the actions by different ministries. A little bit more details on the Green New Deal. This is the identified main areas that the Korean government would like to put the emphasis on. By 2025, Korean government committed to put 70 billion US dollars, thereby creating 659,000 new jobs. And then in terms of the CO2 emissions, it is committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 1.2 million tons of the CO2. This is about 20% of the reduction relative to the target of the 2025 that the Korean government has. So it's a pretty aggressive and then ambitious, actually, plan that Korean government is committing. So there are several zero energy public facilities. So buildings are very, very important in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So Korean government put some of the detailed plans on buildings like greening smart schools. If you go to Korean school buildings, they are pretty outdated. So government would like to take this chance actually to remodel the school buildings so that they can become green smart. According to their term. And then green economy recovery plans, and here 25 cities will be formulated, developed under the concept of smart green cities. Renewables is also a key area to promote. So aggressive deployment of solar wind powers are expected to happen. Thereby, their portion will be current 12 gigatons to 42 gigatons in year 2025. Intelligent power meters will be installed in almost every household. And then green mobility is also an important area, such as electric vehicle and hydrogen vehicle is important for us to consider. And then green industry, green industry, 1.9 billion green loans will be provided to promote all these good efforts. And then the 5 green multi-clusters and 10 smart industrial complexes, and then 1,750 clean factories will be developed. So green technology-wise, CCUS, this is a carbon capture and then storage and then the utilization technologies will be put in place. These are the main areas that the Korean government have identified through the different ministries. And some of the details, I don't want to go to the details, but one of the key issues that within Korean context is that how to phase out the coal power plants in this juncture. So this shows you that how it will be handled in Korea. It's a very challenging target to phase out the coal power plants, but there is no way for us, for Korea, to avoid that. And then this will be more actively pursued under the in the context of the Green New Deal policy in Korea. Hydrogen economy, once again, Korean motor industry has developed and promoted electric vehicle, but now they are focusing also on the manufacturing hydrogen vehicles as well. So if we want to drive hydrogen vehicle, is available in Seoul, and you can get quite a good amount of subsidies from the government actually to purchase this vehicle. And However, there are challenges. Still, there is a little bit of the question whether or not the climate change policy has been mainstreamed, because these are the good areas to focus on. But in terms of the detailed calculations on how much CO2 emissions can be reduced in implementing every single policy areas, so this is still a little bit questionable. So I would think that the mainstream climate policy still needs to be further strengthened in Korea. Interministerial coordination, so far, as I indicated, it looks okay, but further strength needs to be made, especially between the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Energy in Korea, actually, to generate the synergy effects under the strong leadership of the president. That seems to be very, very critical. Need for a more active role in international cooperation. I say cautiously within the Korea that this is the weakest point of the Korean Green New Deal policy now. For instance, among the relevant ministries, I don't see that participation of Minister of Foreign Affairs, for instance. And that Korea used to be a trading country in the world. That has been the driving force of the growing economy in Korea. So from the beginning, even Korean Green New Deal policy needs to be international. And then, for instance, by strengthening the cooperation between Korea and Ethiopia in the context of the strengthening the Green New Deal policy, I think that it will bring the good mutual benefits to both Korea and Ethiopia, for instance, and then in developing countries in general. This is somewhat the point that I'd like to further emphasize even here, that my government, I hope, would like to take a little bit more seriously. And then, of course, the role of the stakeholders, is also important. So governments and the relevant think tanks and organizations and experts, of course, the civil society is important, and the private sectors. All these stakeholders needs to participate in implementing Korean Green New Deal policy. Lessons for developing countries. Number one, this is my suggestions for Ethiopia. Climate change can be a main driver of post-COVID-19 recovery plan. So stick on the CRGE and modify it a little bit more, or utilize it in order to identify the better chances actually to promote the jobs and getting funding, not only from the inside or outside. Mainstreaming climate policy in this sense is very, very important. Aligning national green recovery plans with international initiatives, such as UNS's process, is very, very helpful, not only to develop appropriate national plans, but also to secure more resources from outside. Once again, as I indicated, G20, UN, and some other global fora are the main fora where all these new ideas start to be developed. And once you put your feet in those fora, then it will only help developing countries to have a better access to possible existing opportunities. So please align your domestic actions with international initiatives as well. Resilience, equality, and adaptations are important. However, don't forget, reducing GHG emissions is also important. So when you develop your green recovery plan in the context of climate change, not only adaptation, but also thinking about the mitigation component is very, very important. So I showed you lastly, Ethiopia, this is your CRGE. So I already indicated that in case of another country like Botswana, this is the outcome of the study that I carried out with my student, that most of them are about institutional governance matters. So in other words, that ensuring political interest and formulating the very efficient supporting governance and institutional framework, and putting the good contents. These will be very, very critical elements for developing countries to best utilize the concept of the Green New Deal idea. And once again, this will ensure that strengthening your capacity to address not only COVID-19, but also help your country to better identify the path for the sustainable growth after COVID-19 problem ends. So this is end of my presentation. And then if you need any further information, you can just email me. I provided my email address here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chung, for the meaningful presentation. And now the presentation on roles of forests in post-COVID-19 recovery and GGGI response will be given by Dr. Christopher John Dickinson, the head of Sustainable Landscapes of GGGI. Dr. Dickinson, you have a maximum of 20 minutes for the presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm just trying to get my PowerPoint working. Okay. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Some problems? Okay. I hope you can hear me, by the way. Can someone reply and say you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Okay, great. Okay. So actually my presentation is on the role of forests in post-COVID-19 recovery and also detailing some of GGGI's response and actions. So first of all, I'd like to say hello to everyone, to colleagues in Seoul and also colleagues in Addis Ababa. Salam now, especially Professor Fakado Bayana, the Commissioner of the EFCC, and Mr. Dong-Ho Kim, the Country Director of KOICA, and to Professor Chong for organizing this workshop. My name's Chris Dickinson, and I spent 2 years working for UNDP in Ethiopia for the Commission, looking at sustainable landscapes for the Forest Sector Transformation Unit. I'm now working as the head of Global Sustainable Landscapes for GGGI based in Seoul. So first of all, my presentation is going to be talking a little bit about what GGGI does, also about forests and its role in green recovery, and some regarding GGGI's response. So obviously, when we talk about trees and forests, we're talking about, and also green recovery, we're talking about children's future. And forests take a long time to grow and to restore, but they can be cut and damaged overnight. So it's quite a difficult, complicated strategic issue, but luckily Ethiopia is leading in Africa at forest management and forest restoration. And we're also thankful to the support from KOICA for the 2 projects that will come in 2021 and 2022. So we must remember that this time next year, we hope that the COVID issue will have been tackled, but we also have to bear in mind the climate change problem and biodiversity extinction. These are 2 big problems that are still be with us and need to be tackled as well. And the green recovery from COVID can hopefully help address some of these problems and issues. So first of all, GGGI, as the Director General Frank Rijsbaan mentioned, GGGI is an intergovernmental agency. We work to help the member countries, which are now about 37 countries, to transform their economies to a green growth economic model. We work as trusted advisors with the government. Usually we are based in the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change in various different countries, especially in East Africa. We're working in the Forestry Environment Ministry in Uganda, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And the vision is to develop a low carbon resilient world with strong and sustainable growth. This is similar sort of vision to Ethiopia's CRGE strategy. This is a map that shows some of the countries that we're working in. We have big programs in Indonesia, Colombia, Ecuador, Ethiopia, and India, for example. So we're quite spread out over a number of different countries in Africa and also Latin America and Asia and the Pacific Islands. So talking about forests and COVID-19, well, as we have seen, over the last 10 years, we've seen a rise in number of infectious diseases, and 3/4 of these diseases are related to animals, so known as zoonotic diseases. So 3/4 of these often related to forest or animals. We can remember Ebola in the Congo and Uganda. There's things like SARS, swine flu, Nile fever. A lot of these are related to animals. And the causes are, one is related to the unsustainable food production, the more intensification of livestock. And I was reading an article today about pig production around the world and how this can also possibly result in also like a flu type virus that can be transmitted to humans. So we need to also make sure the food production is safe and clean. Also related to the more interaction between humans and wildlife, especially as forests are destroyed or degraded for agriculture or for logging, and also, of course, for the wildlife trade and consumption. So this is obviously very big in other countries, especially in Asia, but also in Africa as well. So these are some of the causes of zoonotic diseases. And healthy forests reduce the risk of disease. There was a paper recently published in 2020, and this was looking at the benefits of forests, healthy forests, to prevent a future COVID outbreak. So they estimated the world damage from COVID-19 is between $8 and $15 trillion. And I think it's probably increasing the estimates as time goes on. But they did estimate that to stop this and prevent this, it would cost about $22 billion per year. And this could be spent on reducing deforestation, stopping the wildlife trade, enforcing the wildlife trade, and other factors. And if you were to spend $20 billion on forest sector, as you know, as many people in this audience are from forestry, you have many benefits of protecting forests, from protecting water services, creating jobs, reducing carbon, stabilizing soils. And in Ethiopia, we see billions of dollars of lost soil value through rainfall and unsustainable land practices. And the Koika project will come and try and look at models for reducing this in an area in the future. So the amount of money spent on forest conservation, protection, and reducing deforestation actually is fairly small compared to the huge damage that's been done to the world economy. Absolutely the biggest impact in the world ever, probably, yeah, because it's totally global. Forests also are important as a safety net in times of crisis. So when there's a crisis like climate change or lack of water or COVID, the forests provide food or income for 20% of the global population. So forests are often the place that people in poverty turn to when there is a crisis, but also an opportunity. So for example, we have bamboo. Ethiopia has the largest bamboo area in Africa, over 1 million hectares, so a huge economic resource for potential for livelihoods and jobs. As Mr. Dong Ho Kim mentioned, it has coffee, which is very good for growing under the canopy, and also products like honey. Ethiopia is one of the biggest producers of honey in Africa. But with the problems of COVID, it's going to impact the poorest the most, and over 160 million people could face extreme poverty in 2020 and 2021. That's a report by one of the UN agencies. So forests are important also for creating jobs. So every dollar used for forest restoration can result in between $7 and $30 in benefits. As I mentioned, the soil conservation, jobs, water preservation, and biodiversity. and Ethiopia is committed to restore 22 million hectares of forest land by 2030. So it's a huge challenge, and which will need a lot of investment and work. But we've seen excellent progress by the government over the last few years in terms of the tree planting campaigns. And in January 2021 is the start of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So this is going to be a global opportunity to really put emphasis on funding and financing forest restoration in the world, especially in Africa. $1 million spent on forest restoration has also been estimated to create between 500 to 1,000 jobs. This is also what we need in Africa with and Ethiopia, with a large number of unemployed people. And if you compare this to the number of jobs that would be created through investing in energy, it's between 10 and 20 times greater. We also see conditional cash transfers, cash for work programs. These have been successful for forest restoration in China and Vietnam, India, and also Ethiopia has the safety net program. But at times of crisis, this also could be something that could be looked at, trying to not just put these recovery packages into things that are not useful, but to restore upland landscapes and pay for communities and farmers to restore landscapes and to look at soil erosion. The restoring forests for job creation can also be something relatively quick and give direct economic benefits to the poorest of the poor. We also see impact on agriculture and disrupted value chains. There's 265 million people on the brink of starvation, and this has doubled following the pandemic. This has also been exacerbated in East Africa through the terrible locust storms that you've had, and also globally can be exacerbated by climate pressure, as we see water shortages, violence, and instability. So the disrupted value chains often leads to greater forest exploitation and forest degradation. So we do need to focus on food as well as jobs. So we need to have investments to restore food security and build resilient supply chains. Things like seeds, fertilizers, technologies, these are more difficult to import and for farmers to buy in the current crisis. There's new opportunities for things like solar powered irrigation to expand agriculture and to make sure it's more water efficient. And the safety net programs are the cash for work. And also many farmers and enterprises have been affected by a lack of investment opportunities and investment capital. I'm sure a number of companies are really struggling now in the current crisis to pay for workers or to import or export their products. So agricultural value chains have been disrupted enormously. So what is GDGI doing? Well, first of all, GDGI has targets which are compatible with the recovery. And so one of the aims is to create 2 million green jobs. This is largely from the sustainable landscape component, which I am working on. The aim is to leverage additional $16 billion by 2030 and to train 8 million people to adaptation to climate change. As I mentioned, I'm working on sustainable landscapes. I'm the head of this program, and it has 3 major components. One is to look at climate resilient agriculture. Secondly is sustainable forests. And thirdly is to build coastal resilience. And things that we're doing, well, one is many countries are spending large amounts of money on economic plans for green recovery, and GDGI is developing plans to support a large number of member countries. We are supporting economists to several countries in Africa as part of the NDC partnerships, and also supporting through our existing programs. I think that a lot of countries need to think how they will start spending the money and on what is the best for bang for the buck, as they say. This is a graph from a report done by Vivid Economics recently, where they are looking at the published COVID recovery packages, and they've looked at the activities which are the ones in green, which give a positive contribution to the environment and to green economy. And you'll see, for example, South Korea is doing very well with its package. the biggest for any of the countries actually. Germany, UK, France, and also the European Commission have recovery packages which have been regarded as positive for the environment. But there's also a lot of countries out there, Australia, Brazil, India, Russia, USA, where there's a negative contribution to green recovery. So I think that the countries should really be investing in taking the opportunity to build better and to build a green recovery. There's a link here you can check to find the report, which is very interesting. We're also been looking at proposals, so to help support the forest sector. So we have the COICA Climate Resilient Landscapes Program starting very soon, hopefully. It's hopefully been approved by COICA, as was mentioned by Mr. Dong-Ho Kim. We also developed some proposals for African countries for conditional cash transfers for forest restoration. Some of these have been submitted to the EU, and we're waiting to hear whether they will be funded. And we also have a low emission development planning project, which has been submitted to the AFD, the French government, for looking at low emission development planning and bringing in economists to look at the long-term, how we will build on the CRGE and the next 2020 to 2030 plan, and how to mobilize investments for recovery. And in a country like Ethiopia, agriculture and forestry needs to be at the heart of any recovery. In the agriculture sector, we submitted a proposal for the Green Climate Fund to develop a national adaptation plan. This is going to be very important for the country with a lot of impacts on agriculture and forests in the future, especially related to water and temperature rise. And we've also been mobilizing projects to look at climate resilient agriculture and solar irrigation. And I think this is my final slide. One more. So what does the international donor finance community need to do? They need to pay attention to sustainable forest management, conservation and restoration of ecosystems to prevent disease, secure livelihoods, create jobs, and address climate change. So we are entering the decade of forest restoration and the decade of the Sustainable Development Goals, and nature-based solutions, sustainable agriculture and forest conservation must be at the heart of this. And we're hoping that working with our fellow colleagues in UNDP and the Environment Commission, we're hoping that we can try to make sure that donors and finance agencies take this as a priority. Sometimes donors often want to focus on quick wins, but if you only focus on quick wins, then you will not really achieve the ultimate goal of sustainable development in the country. And countries, governments like Ethiopia need to ensure also that forests is at the heart of sustainable development strategies as a solution. My final slide is a link to a report that GGI did on achieving green growth and climate action following post-COVID, and you can click on this link to find this report. And okay, so thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson, for your helpful presentation. And now, thank you. Last but not least for this module, Dr. Sarwa Chaudhry, the policy specialist of UNDP Seoul Policy Center, will provide us her insights on roles of international organizations in implementing NDCs. So Dr. Sarwa Chaudhry, you have up to 20 minutes for the presentation.
Good morning and good afternoon, Your Excellencies, organizers, and those joining us on YouTube, also the various speakers in today's workshop. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to speak at today's webinar. So I lead UNDP's Resilience Program in South Korea and co-lead the Inclusive Green Economy Program of UNDP in 20 countries. So my presentation today, as discussed with the organizers, is focusing on UNDP's support to countries on NDC implementation in the forestry sector. So to start, the Paris Agreement, as we know, sent a clear message that the forests play a critical role in achieving the global climate goal, SDG 13, and dedicated Article 5 of the agreement to forests, in which parties are encouraged to take results-based payments, actions that foster REDD+ strategies, and also alternative policy approaches such as joint mitigation adaptation approaches for integral and sustainable forest management at the same time, reaffirming the importance of incentivizing non-carbon benefits. Also, the Paris Agreement establishes guidelines for carrying out and communicating the ambitious efforts defined in the nationally determined contributions, NDCs, and the characteristics of the progression. So each country's successive NDCs will represent a progression beyond the country's current NDC and reflect its highest possible ambition, reflecting its common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in light of different national circumstances. So with that preamble, let's move to the next slide. So the resilient forest, so deforestation and forest degradation undermine the livelihoods of some 1.6 billion people, threaten biodiversity and critical ecosystem services, and aggravate climate change. So the previous speaker also spoke about these reforestation issues and challenges. Let me say a little bit about globally what UNDP is doing on reforestation and sustainable forest management issues. So UNDP Global Environment Facility supports 69 countries through 89 projects in safeguarding forest, biodiversity, and ecosystem, with financing of over 400, almost $450 million US dollars. And also the JEF Small Grant Program has supported about 20,000 community-based projects, an estimated 35% of which are related to the protection, rehabilitation, and sustainable use of forest ecosystems around the world. UNDP also manages a $400 million portfolio of national REDD+ projects, working through a diverse network of institutions and partners, including with FAO, UN Environment. The UN REDD program in 5 countries, serving as a delivery partner for the World Bank's Forest Carbon Partnership Facility in 7 countries, supports bilateral investment programs for REDD+ in 5 countries, manages the community-based REDD+ initiative in 6 countries, and hosts the secretariat of the Central African Forest Initiative. CAFI is a financial platform with 5 donors, and actually South Korea is a donor of CAFI, and it's in 6 countries in the Central African region. And UNDP also supports pioneer countries with leveraging REDD+ investments and finance, including through the Green Climate Fund, to help advance the global forest policy agenda. UNDP also hosts the secretariat of the New York Declaration on Forest. So our overall work in forest supports indigenous peoples and local communities to participate in global policymaking processes within the UNFCCC mechanism on climate change, also Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD mechanism, and the UN CCD process, which is the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and highlights their contribution to forest protection. And as you may have heard from our director, UNDP is also working on forest offer of support on COVID-19. So we have partners and specialists working in all over the world on forest-related projects. Let's go to the next slide. And in terms of UNDP, climate and forests, and what do we do? We are delivering technical assistance, policy advisor, and quality assurance to support national and subnational REDD+ readiness, implementation, and financial mechanisms. So quality assurance support to country offices during implementation of REDD+ projects, also policy advisory services, and technical assistance to national counterparts upon requests from country offices, and also strategic advice to countries in structuring REDD+ results and receiving results-based payments. So in terms of the 3 phases of RED Plus. On readiness, we have been supporting 34 countries advance their national RED Plus strategies or action plans. 36 countries with their approaches to meet UNFCCC safeguard requirements, and 35 subnational jurisdictions across 8 countries developed RED Plus strategies or forest transformation plan. On the implementation part, 9 countries with costed RED Plus investment or implementation plans. Also, we supported Ecuador to receive $42 million from the Green Climate Fund for the implementation of its national RED Plus action plan. And also we supported the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, to operationalize its national RED Plus fund and access $150 million through the CAFI mechanism, Central African Forest Initiative, that I just mentioned. And and let me here also mention that the World Forestry Congress is taking place. So the CAFI Secretariat is based in Geneva and hosted by UNDP. And the next World Forestry Congress, as we know, is taking place in Korea in 2021. And so we are working with in the consultative group for the World Forestry Congress from UNDP Seoul Policy Center. We are representing UNDP on this. But as I was saying, we have colleagues in different regional centers, global policy centers that are forest experts and practitioners. And so my presentation has benefited from their inputs. And in June, our technical workshop, I had given a longer presentation on these issues. So let me then move on to the next slide, please. So integrating and enhancing RED Plus in the NDC, RED Plus represents the land use change and forestry LULUCF component of the NDC in many countries. And national RED Plus readiness countries have already been working for years in a very participatory manner on LULUCF. Let me spell out the acronyms. NFMS, which is a National Forest Monitoring System, which should be flexible and allows for improvement and building upon existing systems. And also the FREL approach, which is a forest reference emission levels, is a benchmark for emissions exclusively from deforestation and forest degradation. So in this integration work, a RED Plus strategy development, we are looking at robust analysis and consensus on the drivers of deforestation and forest degradation, and also ambitious national vision and related sectoral and cross-sectoral targets that may be integrated into the NDCs as unconditional targets and or conditional to external financial support. And also in terms of social environmental safeguards to ensure that not only do no harm, but also maximization of non-carbon social and environmental benefits, so contribution to SDGs. So let's move to the next slide. So again, on a significant implementation challenge in terms of integrating, enhancing RED Plus in the NDCs is that within national government, teams are working on NDCs and RED Plus often in different ministries, and even if they are in one ministry, maybe different sections of the same ministry. So connections is not always happening. Along with this coordination challenge, there is also the timing issue, because most countries in terms of national RED Plus strategy or NRS can be different from other RED Plus readiness elements or working on NDC enhancement. So now is the time to make these connections and to improve the existing ones. Because there are diverse benefits for countries able to integrate or enhance RED Plus in the NDCs that include benefits include increase the robustness and credibility of their NDC, maximize opportunities and international financial support through clear targets and activities backed up by very participatory processes with clear social and environmental safeguards. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this slide is about matching NDC needs on the ground with global support. In 2019, UNDP conducted a major survey of countries on their plans for 2020 with respect to revising NDCs and current NDC implementation status and critical bottlenecks and success factors. The UNDP survey was organized around 7 core building blocks of the NDC architecture, and more than 130 countries responded, making it the largest survey of its kind to date. So you can see the link to the survey from UNCCC website. And so the survey produced a list of objectives for revising the NDCs, including creating stronger links with SDGs, as well as alignment with development and sectoral plans and targets. So this was the second most important reasons for planned revisions to NDC, cited by 88 governments. Only strengthening of underlying data and evidence ranked higher from 92 countries. And 67 nations intend to incorporate consideration about gender equality and women's empowerment into their revised plans, recognizing the vital roles that women can play in combating the impacts of climate change. And we know that, and also that in terms of helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or the mitigation aspects, also tighter links with development goals can also reinforce action to eliminate poverty and hunger, SDG 1, that is. So this information, bottlenecks, and success factors have served as the launching pad for UNDP's climate promise, which takes me to my next slide. So next slide is the UNDP Climate Promise. The objective is to support 100 countries enhance the national determined contributions by 2020 with demonstrated increase in ambition. So UNDP will support countries to undertake an inclusive and transparent process to revise and submit enhanced nationally determined contribution by 2020 and provide technical and financial support across a tailored set of services to address bottlenecks and scale up success factors. So this NDC enhancement actually captures the idea of NDC progression, which is already inherent in the Paris Agreement, starting with the invitation to communicate new or updated NDCs in 2020. So there is a guidance which is considering the different dimensions of NDC enhancement, mitigation, noting that mitigation enhancement can increase ambition and or facilitate enhanced implementation. Then there is also adaptation and communication, taking into account that objectives and requirements under the Paris Agreement vary across those components. So ideally, NDC enhancement process will bring this in more closely to alignment with the goals of Paris Agreement and maximize benefits of NDCs for development and resilience, incorporating relevant opportunities to strengthen implementation and improve transparency. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see in this slide, as of April 2020, UNDP has received formal requests from 110 governments for support on NDC enhancement under the Climate Promise. And in this list of countries, requests from Africa, we have 35 requests. Most formal request comes from the African continent, also considering different levels of development. 36 least developed countries, 27 small island developing states, which are also very climate vulnerable countries, and 13 high emitter of greenhouse gas emissions that have submitted requests. So this 2020 round of NDC enhancement would effectively kickstart the Paris Agreement's mechanism for enhancing NDC ambition. Also, this 2020 process for enhancing NDCs offers an opportunity to examine the ambition of initial NDCs in light of progress that has been made. Also, all country announcement of NDC ambition are being determined in the NDC tracker, which is based on Climate Watch data. So you can actually, this NDC tracker is available online, and that's a good tool to review as well. So in terms of menu of services for NDC enhancement, that includes 5 specific sectors. So you can actually, I think the presentation will be shared, so I won't read out the 5 services, but let me just read the first one: build political will and societal ownership at national and subnational levels. So buy-in from powerful ministries and those such as those that are usually in charge of planning and finance should be viewed as fundamental in this process. Some countries have also found peer-to-peer exchange can help raise the interest of Ministry of Finance, for example. In an exchange between Honduras and Dominican Republic, organized by the NDC Partnership Support Unit, Honduras gained greater appreciation of the financial opportunities related to NDC implementation from the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Development of the Dominican Republic. So within this peer-to-peer exchange, there is heightened interest within Honduras. So this example, of course, is related to the NDC implementation process, but lessons may be applicable to engagement of various ministries during the NDC enhancement process as well. And again, reviewing, aligning, and updating existing targets is very important, along with incorporating new sectors and our GHGs, assessing costs and investment opportunities, and monitoring progress and strengthening transparency. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So in terms of opportunities to strengthen policies and measures in RED+, there are some examples where RED+ strategies and investment plans are already well reflected in their nationally determined contributions. And a corresponding level of detail is contained within the NDC or RED+. For example, in Ghana, the NDC, the National RED+ strategy was developed same year as the NDC submission in 2015 and is well reflected in the NDC. And also, however, many national RED+ strategies finalized after their INDC, so intended national determined contributions, were submitted, which kind of INDCs that went before the national NDCs were agreed on. So specifically, and/or a quantification of role of forest is currently not reflected in those NDCs. Cambodia refers to this in their first NDC. The actions for LULUCF are presented as a conditional contribution. A precise list of actions and the greenhouse gas impacts will be uploaded after the finalization of the RED+ strategy. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So enhancing NDC through forest mitigation, there are a number of entry points, including reviewing, aligning, and updating existing targets and policies and measures, monitoring progress and strengthening transparency, and incorporating new sectors and or GHGs, greenhouse gases. So I will not be reading through this one because I realize we're short of time. And then climate promise, in terms of forest and land use activities, we see that 53 of the 110 countries are requesting LULUCF related support in their climate promise activities. And from the African continent, we see activity requests are 28% coming from Africa, and Ethiopia is one of those countries. Okay, so this is also available online. So let's go to the next slide, please. So in this slide, I wanted to highlight country-specific examples, specific forest-related activities in climate promise work plan. Let me just talk about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe supports the realignment of the forest policy with the revised NDC in supporting the finalization of national forest definition based on subsector consultations. So subsector consultations took place in commercial timber conservation, working with local authorities and academia, and procurement of 6 increment BORs for forest carbon quantification to determine country-specific wood density, and also training on collect art modules for forest resource monitoring and ODK for greenhouse gas inventories. And then we have examples of Cambodia and Paraguay, but let me not talk, you have this information there. Let me now go to this publication pathway for increasing nature-based solution in NDCs. It's a 7-step approach for enhancing NDCs through nature-based solutions. And this provides a framework for governments to identify potential nature-based solutions with the aim of enhancing their climate mitigation and adaptation action in a cost-effective manner with multiple benefits. And so provides a concise summary of specific actions to consider and is organized in 7 steps. You can see the cover page here. And this report is accessible online with this title. And so the step 1 is on establishing an understanding of the national greenhouse gas as an accounting context. And this steps aims at creating a comprehensive understanding of the current context of greenhouse gas emissions by sources as well as removal by sinks as essential exercise for countries' NDCs. Second step identifies and reviews existing nature-based action in national legal and institutional framework. This step implies identification of nature-based steps that are already solutions that are already taken place as part of the country's plans, policies. So the idea behind compiling existing nature-based solution action is not only to make evident to policymakers, but also to showcase the potential low-hanging fruits available to countries to enhance their NDCs. Step 3 is on identifying and reviewing nature-based solution actions in the current NDCs and includes a review of current nature-based actions present in the current NDC or enhanced NDC proposal. In the step 4, it's a rapid analysis of estimating the climate change and mitigation or adaptation potential of the existing actions. And so to quantify various paths that countries can follow. Step 5 is a crosswalk nature-based solution pathway with existing measurable nature-based actions, and also identifies opportunities to enhance NDC using spatial data. The 6th step, integrated measurable nature-based actions into the NDCs. So that includes quantifiable indicators, which is very important to track progress to achieve the NDC goals. And step 7 on improving or creating the enabling conditions to support implementation of nature-based action integrated into the NDCs. So this step entails identification, main enabling conditions needed to support the nature-based solution. So if you're interested, please, you can download this document. I also wanted to share some tools and resources for enhancing NDCs. This can be downloaded as well. I wanted to mention that in my longer presentation in June, I talked about the importance of aligning the nationally determined contribution with and the sustainable development goals and the country's ongoing national development planning. So NDCs and SDGs, they are not happening in isolations, and it's not an immediate quick process. And so it's important to start where linkages are easiest, and it takes a all of government approach and opportunity to recognize the links between climate change and development, as well as promoting action on both agendas in an integrative way to effectively meet agreements. So that the longer part of the presentation is available in the website I think that the organizers have already uploaded the longer technical presentation. Let me just finish by saying that, last year in March in Accra, there was the first Africa Climate Week, which provided a critical opportunity to build momentum for raising the level of ambition on the part of African countries to achieve the goals of Paris Agreement and to limit climate change. More recently, also actually later last year, the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration was declared 2021 to 2030. And also the national, this weekend I spoke with Korea Forest Service partners about the Bond Challenge, which is a global effort to bring 150 million hectares of degraded and deforested lands into restoration by 2030. And also it goes up to 2020 and 2030 is 350 million. So these are really ambitious efforts, and the target year is starting this year for one challenge, and there are a lot of regional efforts undergoing. So, and as we heard, Ethiopia is taking a lot of ambitious steps. So to address drivers of deforestation and degradation, it's always very necessary to develop solutions that integrate forest with the development of viable socioeconomic livelihoods. So I think with that message, I would like to end, and I from UNDP Seoul Policy Center and from UNDP, you can see the name of our nature and climate and environment team and climate forest team of overall UNDP as acknowledgement here. We have been very proud to be part of this project. So I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for your insightful presentation. And now we will have a 20 minutes of Q&A session. So I would like to give the floor to our moderator, Dr. Dongkyun Park of CSD Lab, to moderate the Q&A session. Dr. Park.
Thank you, Jiyoon. The first, this module 2 is roles of international organizations, and then first speaker was Dr. Kim of Ethiopia Country Office Director of KOICA, and he delivered KOICA's cooperation with Ethiopia to address COVID-19, and it was very clear what they are doing. And also the second speaker was Professor Jung of and its lessons for developing countries, and he shared Korea's experience. And now the roles of international organizations in implementation NDCs by Dr. Dickens and Dex Sarawat of the GGGI and UNDP Seoul Policy Center. And Dr. Dickens delivered the role of the post the role about the GGIs in post COVID-19, and then he showed us, he tell us about what the GGIs can do it. And then Sarawat, Dr. Sarawat can also explain the recent jobs of the pathway for increasing nature-based solutions in NDCs, and a 7-step approach for enhancing nationally determined contributions through nature-based solutions, a very new one. Even it was very difficult for me to follow the steps. But anyway, any of you, if you have questions for Dr. Kim, Jung, and then Dickens and Sarawat, please leave your questions in this chatting room. But before that, I have a question for Sarawat. Your center, UNDP Seoul Policy Center, is working on forestry issues in Korea also. What are the lessons that developing countries can learn from the Korea's case? Can you make a short statement?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, we know that forests provide many tangible and intangible services, but sadly, these services are often ignored or taken for granted until the forests are destroyed and no longer providing those services. So I wanted to start with the caveat that it's always more cost effective to preserve natural forests and manage them sustainably rather than and which also can avoid the loss of lives and livelihoods and also the cost resulting from natural disaster and the huge necessary investment to restore forest cover. But we know that in Korea's case, the result was the war and dire needs of population, that the devastation of Korea's forest. But despite this devastation, Korea was able to successfully transform its denuded forests into rich forests in less than half a century, with its strong policies and focused implementation efforts. So this reforestation experience of Korea, this is something a lesson and a kind of experience that's useful for developing countries, but also in terms of current policies in urban forestry, in green recovery, wildfire management, and also future-oriented work on experimental forests that I have visited in Jeju, experimental forest work happening in Korea, and adaptive research on climate change adaptation. So that's why Korea's experience is quite unique to share with other countries that are looking to implement sustainable forestry initiatives, and also these other issues, for example, wildfire management. Currently we're seeing in news in California the devastating wildfire. So these kind of challenges are faced by both developed and developing countries, and Korea has good lessons to share. Our research at the Seoul Policy Center also has shown that the work investment in reforestation is economically viable, and we have done this research with Professor Son, Professor Lee, who Professor Son is speaking a bit later today on from Korean experience. But let me just also add the point that even before the COVID, our planet is already facing this dual challenge of climate change and nature. And but now the COVID situation has exacerbated this situation. So Korea has tropical experiences, and with our 170 country presence from UNDP, we also have a broader portfolio of work, and we are working on forest COVID response, and our support and collaboration with Korea draws on those and leverages on this kind of broader portfolio of work, including in different countries that our center is supporting. This includes Ghana, Myanmar, and also Tajikistan. And we selected 2 countries as our director mentioned. Thank you.
Dr. Sawa, thank you very much for your clear explanation. I do not have any questions. I have one more question for you. You introduced the pathway for increasing nature-based solution in NDCs, and then you introduced 3 countries, Zimbabwe and Cambodia and Paraguay. How can you apply this concept into Ethiopia? Can you make explain very short, in short, for Ethiopia countries, for this pathway for increasing nature-based solutions?
Sure. Thank you for this good question. Actually, these are the 3 examples that we utilize in the forest specific activities for the work plan that we have started in Climate Promise. And but in terms of I'm not an expert on Ethiopia, so specifically which kind of work it would be happening, that's something I think we would need to consult with our partners in Ethiopia in terms of what would be the work plan. But I think the main element would be the realignment of the forest policy and the NDC implementation processes. These are the elements I think should remain. Also, like elements such as the raising of awareness and building capacity with NDC coordinating institutions. These are exists if needs to be supported. These are things that would be part of this, as well as the updating of the forestry sector priorities and targets on sectoral policies. But I believe Ethiopia is already quite advanced on this, but I think a first step would be to go through the steps on the pathways progress and then work with our Climate Promise colleagues. So if there is interest, I can also connect our counterparts, UNDP counterparts who are working on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question to Dr. Dickens. You're here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you introduced the role of forest in post-COVID-19 recovery and mentioned that this forestry is for the next generation, especially the young kids. How about the forest and green recovery in terms of the Ethiopia? And then you were in 2 years in Ethiopia and now in Korea. And you were expert in the forestry sector. So, okay, your experience in Ethiopia. So what do you recommend for your Ethiopian government officers? What do you recommend? Now for 10 years later, what are they doing? What do they do prepare for this post-COVID-19?
Well, forests are a nature-based solution, yeah? So first of all, we need to restore the ecosystems and not just look at tree planting, but also make sure we're tree growing. So when we plant trees, we need to have at least a 3-year plan for every area that's planted by trees so that they survive. Secondly, we need to look at agroforestry solutions. This is very good for maintaining soil and for looking at agriculture and different products. So you have multiple crops in an area, so it's more resilient to climate change. They also should look at cash for work programs. So some of the overseas developed countries and also in Ethiopia should plan for taking the opportunity of the decade of forest restoration, which starts in January next year, to restore these landscapes and restore the fertility of the soil. We also need to provide finance for businesses and communities and farmers so that they can invest in the businesses and make sure that they're profitable. I think a lot of companies have had problem with access to finance. Probably quite a few have gone bankrupt. We also need to look at preserving water sources. This is very important in Ethiopia for its long-term development. So preserving wetlands and river zones, riparian zones, and also upland watersheds is very important for recovery. And ultimately also jobs and factories, yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity for jobs related to forestry, whether it's poles for export around the world or making furniture or for the bamboo sector. And Koika's also recognized the importance of bamboo. And as Mr. Dong Ho Kim mentioned, there's a UNDP bamboo project, which I also helped write, will start in 2022, yeah. But that's good to have that on the agenda. So there's a lot of different strategies, but we also need to conserve existing forests and to make sure the biodiversity in there is conserved, and lots of it will be threatened by climate change as well as human disturbance. So we need resilient landscapes with lots of heterogeneous types of lots of habitats in the areas so species can adapt and migrate to different areas. So there's a number of different things that can be done. Yep.
Okay, thanks. I have a question. Dr. Dong Ho Kim of Koika, the director. Dr. Kim. Dr. Dickens introduced the Koika will initiate 2 more projects in 2021, 2022. Is that right? In the forestry and environment sector?
Yes, so the forest management project is under the process of approval by the Korean National Assembly. So finally, we will be able to get the approval as soon as possible. As for the second project, bamboo project, due to the budget restraint, we postponed bamboo project to the year of 2022. So we will start the formulation process around November or December because of the current serious problem of the COVID-19. We postponed such kind of formulation process. So we hope this COVID-19 pandemic will be decreased by the end of November. Then we will start such kind of formulation process, we hope.
I never heard that. Last 20, 25 years, even forestry or environment project, for two projects start together. It was very news to me, Greek to me, and what was the motivation? You started this two projects in almost same time. Maybe the innocent Jijija will support, or the Professor Jung's give the idea, but the Koika initiated this kind of the ideas. But what was the motivation?
Okay, so Koika has been carrying out the healthcare program, but nowadays we are starting to formulate new country program. So new country program has the 4 pillars. So one of the pillar is the green economy and the climate change response. Second thing is that manufacturing for the future prosperity. So nowadays we are putting great emphasis on the response to the negative impact by the COVID-19, especially to the vulnerables. So Koika is going to carry out such kind of green economy program, especially considering the negative emphasis of the COVID-19. Also, we continue to support to our climate change response, especially in the field of forest management program. So the other three, the 4 pillars is the healthcare program, also peace for the social inclusion. Third thing is that manufacture for the future prosperity. Last thing is that green economy and climate change response. That's the 4 new country program directions. So we will put more attention to the forest management and some other climate change issues. Thank you.
I understand that these 2 projects will also provide new jobs for young people, and then the ladies and women's. So it's part of a Green New Deal program. Can you say that?
Yes. So because Ethiopian government has its own climate resilience, the green economy program. So we are going to align our country strategy to Ethiopian policies and the policy direction to preserve, and also react to the climate change response, as well as the job creation through this kind of green economy programs.
Thank you very much for your good explanation. I have enough time, but I have one more question for GGI, Dr. Innocent.
Go ahead.
You did a good, the support all this, preparation of these 2 projects. So what was your impressions? What was the difficult point to prepare for this project? Who supported you very much?
Thank you very much, Dr. Park. You know this, you have been part of this as well. I think I will start with the easy part, because when we met Koika and when they were exploring the updating their mandate in Ethiopia, having green economy and climate change response, we realized that she was aligned with what we are doing. But at the same time, they insist on three things like jobs creation, inclusion, youth and women, and also poverty reduction, which were in their mission from the beginning. So what was good for us is that when we prepared the concept note that that will bring in 12 million for forest restoration, we actually made sure that all these elements are included in this proposal. So meaning from next year, when we start implementation, we will be able to create jobs because it's community-based implementation, where they will do everything from nursery of trees and all that. We will also work with young people and women who are deprived of income in villages and therefore trying to alleviate poverty, but at the same time, having the bigger picture of climate change mitigation. So I think this was really, really good. Anyway, the difficult part was that this is something that is forestry touches different ministries and many stakeholders. So we had a lot of consultations. But then I think it became easier when the facts-finding mission came to Ethiopia, because we are able to have a common understanding. We went to the field, and from there we are able to finish, have a really project that we agree upon, all of us, from the team that came from Korea for facts-finding mission, the stakeholders in Ethiopia, plus Koika, of course, office, and all the people who were involved from the different ministries. So I think those were different key pillars that made this project, be accepted at this level, and we hope it will be finally accepted. But the support from Koika office in Ethiopia was extremely very helpful. They were involved 100%. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Thank you, Professor Park.
Last question to Mr. Sin of Koika. Mr. Sin. Mr. Sin of Koika.
Sorry, we are the electricity went out, so
okay. Maybe. Thank you very much. We are running out of time. Okay. I will finish up this module 2, and Ji-yoon, please.
Thank you, Dr. Park, for moderating the session. We will now have 2 hours of lunch break, so please be back by 2 p.m. for afternoon modules. You can stay connected in the webinar or leave and come back by 2 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.